The announcement arrived on station Helion at 0420 hours, when most of the crew was either asleep, pretending to be asleep, or arguing with the station's ancient coffee dispenser. A brief tone echoed through the intercom, followed by the clipped voice of Admiral Saren. Lieutenant Arya Talis is confirmed deceased in the line of duty. The line cut there, as if the station itself refused to let the message linger. In the silence that followed, a wrench clattered from someone's hand. A Marine muttered a curse. Someone else whispered that command had to be wrong because Arya owed her 20 credits. No one laughed. Arya's name drifted down the corridors like a cold draft. She had always been impossible to ignore, even by accident. Her long ears gave her an expression that alternated between fierce focus and unintentional mockery, depending on how dramatically they twitched. But the crew didn't miss her because of that. They missed her because she had a habit of saving people who had no business surviving. She'd once dragged a pilot out of a burning shuttle by grabbing his collar and shouting that she refused to fill out the accident paperwork. Humor was her armor, and somehow it worked better than standard-issue plating. In the mess hall, a group of technicians sat in a stunned circle, staring into cups that tasted like recycled regret. Harlan, the senior engineer, tried to lighten the mood. "Well," he said, tapping his mug, "if anyone could cheat death, it'd be her. Probably argue with it first." His voice cracked, betraying the grin he attempted. No one responded. Even the coffee dispenser let out a sympathetic wheeze. Far above them, the station lights dimmed to half-brightness as the crew began preparing a memorial. A banner was ordered. A hollow picture was retrieved, ironically the one she hated most. The shot where her ears were bent at different angles because a Marine had sneezed on her mid-mission. Commander Rellos rehearsed a speech about sacrifice, dignity, and honor, but his datapad kept glitching and replacing every instance of heroic with mildly irritating, which most agreed was far more accurate. Still, despite the attempts at solemnity, the mood never settled into true grief. There was confusion threaded through it, the sense that something didn't fit. Arya wasn't the type to simply vanish. She made noise, left messes, and had a tendency to appear at the least convenient moment, usually accompanied by sarcastic commentary and a trail of regulations she'd unintentionally broken. The station felt too quiet without her. A quiet station was a suspicious station. Down in Hangar Bay 2, Sergeant Mavic stood staring at a scorched dent on Shuttle A-19's hull. Arya had put that dent there during an escape last year, insisting she could gently tap the docking clamps into alignment. The dent didn't bother anyone, they'd kept it as a landmark. "She can't be gone," Mavic muttered, tracing the edge with his gloved finger. "She still owes me for that time she hid the Admiral's cat in my locker." The cat had never forgiven either of them. Meanwhile, command staff tried to look composed, but the station feeds caught glimpses of them speaking in low tones, arguing about miscommunications, unreliable battlefield sensors, and the unfortunate timing of the Admiral's scheduled inspection. There was even a rumor that Arya's file had mysteriously updated to include the note, "tendency to return unexpectedly." Most assumed it was a glitch. Others weren't so sure. And then, hours later, something strange began happening. A maintenance drone drifting near the outer hull sent an alert, an unidentified life sign cluster approaching from the planet's surface. At first the signal was dismissed as interference. Then it sharpened. Then it multiplied. The cluster consisted of 3 signatures: weak, irregular, human adjacent. The drone tried to run a full scan, then promptly exploded, which was considered rude even by drone standards. No one noticed the readings in time. Everyone was too busy preparing for the ceremony, adjusting uniforms, practicing solemn expressions, or arguing about whether Arya would have hated or secretly enjoyed the attention. The Admiral demanded that the station's anthem be played. The communications officer insisted that half the anthem's file was corrupted and sounded like a herd of goats being electrocuted. The Admiral approved it anyway, declaring it appropriately somber. As the hangar was arranged, people began gathering in small groups, sharing stories. One Marine recalled how Arya had once carried him 3 kilometers after he fainted during a training drill. Another remembered how she'd used her long ears to cheat at a sound frequency puzzle, claiming it was not her fault other species were designed inefficiently. Laughter finally broke through, brief, small, but real. But in the outer docking ring, long before anyone noticed, the emergency lock of airlock D7 flickered from red to green. The chamber cycled with a hiss, its systems protesting the strain of unplanned use. Dust drifted off armor and boots. Shadows moved inside. The station AI issued a mild warning, unauthorized airlock access detected. If this is another prank involving inflatable cephalopods, please reconsider. The message was ignored. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Slow, heavy, irregular. A limp dragged across the floor plating. Someone coughed. Someone else groaned loudly and complained about walking. A third voice, steady but exhausted, muttered, "If you two die on this hallway, I swear I'll file you as cargo to save myself the paperwork." The sensor lights flared to life. There she stood. Arya Talis. Covered in dirt, streaked with dried blood that wasn't all hers, one sleeve missing, one boot torn open, long ears drooping like wilted banners. Her stance wavered under the weight of the 2 battered Marines she kept upright with stubborn strength. One Marine's armor was cracked, the other's leg was splintered with what suspiciously looked like a broken drone wing. She looked at the corridor, at the silent cameras, and blinked. "Hello?" she called out, her voice hoarse. Is this the right station? If not, I'm going to be extremely annoyed." Silence answered. Then the Marine on her right slurred, "Told you she couldn't carry us both up the ramp." Arya rolled her eyes and kept walking. "I literally saved your life." "Yeah," he muttered, "but you're still short." Her ears twitched in irritated triumph. "Short enough to not let you die. Remember that." They limped forward, leaving small traces of dust and blood across the polished station floor. Arya sighed deeply, her voice echoing ahead of her as she continued toward the heart of the station. "Command says I'm dead," she murmured to herself. "Perfect. Maybe they won't yell at me for missing the morning briefing." She tightened her grip on the 2 wounded soldiers and kept moving, unaware that the entire memorial assembly was only minutes away from beginning. Unaware that the Admiral was practicing his "noble tragedy" voice. Unaware that her mere presence marching down the hallway would break every carefully arranged plan aboard Helion. And unaware, most of all, that she was about to walk straight into her own funeral. The corridor leading from airlock D7 toward the medical wing felt much longer than Arya remembered. Or maybe she was just tired enough that even gravity seemed heavier. Every step echoed with the hollow clank of damaged armor and the unsteady rhythm of 2 Marines who had absolutely no respect for how hard they were leaning on her. The lights overhead flickered as if unsure whether to welcome her back or faint in surprise. Sergeant Vale, the Marine with the cracked helmet, groaned dramatically. "Lieutenant, I'm losing vision in my left eye." Arya didn't slow her pace. "Your left eye is fine. Your helmet is filled with 6 kilograms of dirt, shrapnel, and one very confused insect that's been biting your forehead for 20 minutes. He swatted at his visor in panic. "What insect?" Corporal Rin, limping on her right side, muttered, "The one smarter than you." Arya's ears twitched upward in amusement. "See? She's still alive enough to insult you. Both of you will be just fine." Except they weren't fine. They were half-conscious, dehydrated, bruised, and radiating the kind of stubborn life force that came only from people too irritated to die properly. She kept moving because if she stopped, she might collapse herself, and she refused to be the officer who fainted before her men did. A soft chime pinged from the ceiling. The station AI spoke with a tone that suggested it was trying to sound polite and failing. "Lieutenant Arya Talis, you are not authorized to access this corridor. According to command databases, you are deceased." Arya nearly tripped. And according to my legs, I'm walking. Update your records. I cannot, the AI replied. Override requires proof of life. Rin raised a hand weakly. She's yelling. That's proof. My sensors require biometric confirmation. Arya sighed, stopped, lifted one boot, and kicked the nearest wall panel. Sparks flew. The AI shrieked. Ow. Proof enough. Processing. Identity confirmed. Welcome back, Lieutenant. Arya resumed walking. Thank you. And don't pretend you have pain receptors. I do not. But it felt rude to ignore being kicked. They continued in exhausted silence until the corridor opened into the wide threshold of the medical wing. The doors slid open automatically, then hesitated as if unsure whether they should. A medic standing inside froze mid-step, a tray of instruments trembling in his hands. The scalpel slipped, bounced, and stabbed into his boot. He yelped. Arya raised a hand weakly. Hi. We need a little help. A little, the medic squeaked. Lieutenant, command declared you dead. Great, Arya muttered, maybe they won't put the rescue paperwork on my desk. Rin snorted, then winced, pressing a hand to her bruised ribs. Vale finally toppled sideways, dragging Arya halfway down with him until two medics rushed forward and caught him. They guided both Marines onto med stretchers, scanning them with shimmering blue arcs of healing nanites that buzzed like annoyed insects. Arya tried to follow them inside, but a holographic barrier shimmered to life across the doorway. Quarantine in effect, the AI warned. You are covered in 12 hazardous substances. 12. Arya squinted at her shoulder. I thought it was 9. 2 were recently identified. One is still arguing with the scanner about being classified as hazardous. A medic approached wearing a full containment suit that puffed with every step. Lieutenant, we need to get you checked too. Please don't touch anything. Or breathe aggressively. Or shed particles. I'm not shedding particles, Arya protested, brushing dirt from her arm. A small avalanche of dust hit the floor. Okay, maybe small particles. They guided her to a decontamination chamber shaped like a cylinder of glowing mist. She stepped inside, and it immediately sprayed her with a high-pressure burst of sterilizing foam. She sputtered. Is this necessary? Yes, the medic answered. You're practically compost. Rin, already half asleep on her stretcher, mumbled, she smells like compost. Arya flicked suds off her long ears. I carried you for 6 kilometers. And I appreciate it, Rin said, but you still smell like compost. After several rounds of foam, mist, heat, and one unnecessarily dramatic vacuum cycle, the chamber released her with a hiss. Her hair was plastered to her head, and her ears stuck outward like stressed antennae. The medics examined her with scanners, poking at old injuries and raising eyebrows at newer ones. What hit you? One of them asked. Arya shrugged. A building. Then an explosion. Then a piece of the same building. Also a small alien creature that tried to eat my boot. The medic blinked slowly. Of course. Once the Marines were stabilized, Arya sat beside their beds, exhausted but restless. Vale slept with his mouth open, snoring like a broken ventilation fan. Rin mumbled battle commands at random, occasionally shouting at imaginary enemies. The med chief stepped in, tapping a datapad. Lieutenant, command wants to see you immediately. Something about urgent clarification and please tell us you're really alive. They also mentioned an admiral fainting, but that may be unrelated. Arya groaned. I just got scrubbed raw and almost dehydrated by a decontamination unit that hates me. It does, the med chief confirmed. You blew out one of its filters. She stood, stretching her sore muscles, and her ears drooped tiredly. Fine. Let's get this over with before someone prepares a second funeral. The Med Chief escorted her out, but before she left, she turned to the Marines. Don't die again. I'm not carrying you twice in the same week. Vale snorted in his sleep. Rin rolled over and muttered, short. Arya shook her head. Unbelievable. As she stepped into the corridor, the AI chimed again. Lieutenant, command has been notified of your movement. They are preparing Conference Room 1. Oh no, Arya muttered. Not Conference Room 1. That's the room where they interrogate admirals who steal snacks from the mess hall. Correct, the AI said. Also the room where they once detained a pirate captain who refused to stop singing. Arya sighed. Perfect. I'm going to be interrogated in the singing pirate room. She made her way through the dimly humming corridors, passing crew members who stopped mid-conversation, mid-stride, mid-life to stare at her. Some gasped. Some cheered. One engineer dropped his entire lunch tray and whispered, "She returns from the void like a vengeful ghost." "I'm not a ghost," Arya said as she passed. "But I can haunt you if you want." He ran away. By the time she reached the corridor leading to command's chambers, the rumors had apparently outrun her. A group of junior officers stood clustered outside the conference room, whispering fiercely. When they saw her, they stiffened like malfunctioning androids. One saluted so abruptly he smacked himself in the face. Another dropped her tablet, picked it up, dropped it again, and then kicked it under a nearby console in defeat. Arya blinked. Relax. I'm alive, not legendary. Ma'am, the junior officer squeaked, you walked into the station carrying 2 Marines while covered in blood. And you were declared dead. Arya shrugged. Clerical error. He stared. She walked past him, pushed open the doors, and stepped inside. The room fell silent. Command officers lined the table, stiff-backed and pale, staring at her like she was a time-travel paradox that had walked in to file a complaint. Admiral Saren sat at the head, his hands trembling slightly. Arya looked at them all, lifted a hand, and said, "Hi." No one moved. She sighed. Okay. Who wants to start yelling at me for being alive? The silence in Conference Room 1 pressed against Arya like an invisible bulkhead. Every officer present stared as though she had crawled out of a black hole and politely knocked on the door. Admiral Saren cleared his throat once, twice, then a third time, each attempt sounding less authoritative and more like someone trying to swallow a stubborn marble. "Lieutenant Talis," he finally said, voice cracking. "You are supposed to be dead." Arya crossed her arms. "I tried that. Didn't take." A few officers twitched. One coughed into his sleeve to hide a laugh. Another made a strangled noise like a malfunctioning comm unit. Arya pretended not to notice and gestured to the empty chair across from the admiral. "Am I allowed to sit, or is that a privilege reserved for the living?" The admiral gestured stiffly, and Arya sat, wincing as her sore muscles protested. Her long ears drooped tiredly, but she lifted them enough to show she was paying attention, or at least pretending to. "We need a full explanation," Saren said, tapping the datapad in front of him. The pad flickered uncertainly, clearly overwhelmed. "All official reports state your unit was destroyed. Sensors indicated no survivors." "Your sensors," Arya said, "also mistook a meteor for a distress flare last month. Twice." "That was a calibration error," the admiral muttered. "It hit the station." "A calibration error." Arya leaned back. "Fine. Which part do you want? The part where the bunker collapsed? The part where Rin screamed at the artillery drone until it malfunctioned out of pity? The part where Vale tried to fight a 6-legged predator with an empty ration can? Or the part where I dragged both of them across a crater field while arguing about whose fault it was that the evacuation shuttle exploded?" Captain Denera lifted a shaky hand. "Start at the beginning." Arya nodded. All right. But I warn you, the beginning is extremely stupid. That earned her a few more twitching mouths and one quiet snort. Good. Humor kept people from panicking, which was her entire strategy for surviving command meetings. She took a breath. When the attack hit, our comm system was fried instantly. The bunker's shields collapsed 20 seconds later. We had no air support, no signal boosters, and absolutely no backup. But we had one functioning escape tunnel. The Admiral nodded slowly. Which collapsed? Yes, Arya said. Because Vale insisted the structural supports were decorative. Across the table, a general pinched the bridge of his nose. Why, he asked quietly, would anyone think structural supports were decorative? Arya shrugged. You'd have to ask him. He also thinks plasma grenades are a good source of emergency lighting. The room collectively sighed. A few officers exchanged the look of people reconsidering every personnel decision they'd ever made. Arya continued. We dug ourselves out, only to find the enemy sweeping the surface. Their scanners were catching anything larger than a rabbit, so we moved slowly. And quietly. Which was hard, because Rin kept yelling at Vale for breathing too loud. She does that, a colonel muttered. Then our luck got worse. A drone found us. I threw my last pulse blade at it. You threw it? Saren asked. It seemed inspired at the time. There was a moment of long, painful silence. And did it work? The Admiral finally asked. Arya smirked. Yes. I'm very good at throwing things. The colonel beside him facepalmed. She went on. After that, the Marines started losing energy fast. Vale's armor was cracked and cutting into his side. Rin's leg was broken. I reinforced it with half a drone wing and a belt buckle. That is not a recommended medical procedure, the med chief murmured from the back of the room. Arya waved a hand. It worked. She's alive. Mostly annoyed, but alive. Anyway, we reached the planetary ridge, expecting to find a rescue beacon. And? Saren asked. And we found a crater the size of my career prospects. Someone choked on their own breath. Arya looked around the table. We were stranded. No shelter. No signal. No food beyond one crushed protein pack. So we walked. And walked. And walked some more. Rin passed out twice. Vale tried to flirt with death. Death declined. She paused. Frankly, I was insulted. I would have flirted back. A few officers actually laughed. Not loud, but real. Arya leaned forward. We made it to the North Ridge at dawn. That's when I saw your sensor drone. It was 3 meters off the ground, spinning in circles, arguing with its own navigation subroutine. That drone cost 12 million credits, the Admiral sighed. It also exploded, Arya said cheerfully. So technically it costs 0 now. The room groaned. After that, Arya continued, I found a cliff drop with a cave that shielded us from detection. I stabilized the Marines for 2 hours, then climbed halfway down the ravine to retrieve an enemy power cell. I used it to power a distress ping. The Admiral blinked. Our logs show no such ping. Arya shrugged. Well, something heard it. Or maybe the universe decided to take pity on us. Either way, the ridge collapsed shortly after, and we slid half the way to the valley. Vale screamed the whole time. Rin screamed when she landed on top of him. Correct, said a weary voice from the doorway. Everyone turned. Rin, wrapped in medical gauze and balancing on a grav crutch, stood leaning against the frame, glaring at the officers with a mixture of exhaustion and victory. Her hair was wild. Her eyes were burning. Her crutch flickered every few seconds as if deciding whether to remain operational. "I told you," she said, pointing at Arya, "that she didn't die. She's too stubborn." Behind her, Vale limped in with a medic's help, looking like someone who planned to never move again once he reached a chair. "We're here," he said. "We're alive. And she saved us." The med chief tried to guide them back, but Rin hissed, "No. I need to be present while command tries to pretend this wasn't their fault." The admiral flinched. Arya lifted a hand. "Rin, don't." "No," Rin snapped. "I almost died. Twice. And you dragged us through hell. And command has the nerve to sit here asking why you're not dead." Vale nodded enthusiastically. She also yelled at a crater. And it listened. Arya covered her face. "Vale. Please." The admiral cleared his throat. "Lieutenant Thales, why didn't you send word sooner? Anything at all?" "Because," Arya said, lifting her head, "we were busy not dying. And your equipment was busy not working." He opened his mouth, closed it again, then sighed. "Lieutenant. What do you expect us to do with this information? The official record declared you dead. Your personnel file was already archived." Arya smiled tiredly. "Unarchive it. That's not a simple process." "Neither is coming back," she said. "But I managed." Rin jabbed her crutch at the admiral. "Fix the record. And give her a medal." Vale nodded again. "A big one. With lights." "No lights," Arya muttered. Rin ignored her. "And stop sending malfunctioning drones to scout death zones." The admiral slumped. "Lieutenant, your actions were reckless, dangerous, unauthorized, and completely outside protocol." Arya stiffened, preparing for punishment. Then he said quietly, "And you saved 2 Marines. Against every odd. Against every report. Against the entire enemy battalion. You should not be alive, yet here you are. You defied your orders to prioritize your people. That is, inconvenient. But admirable." The room fell silent. Arya swallowed. Her ears drooped slightly. Not from exhaustion this time, but relief. Saren stood. "We will correct the records. And we will debrief you in detail. But first," he paused. "Lieutenant, the entire station is gathered in Hangar 3 for your memorial." Arya blinked. "My what?" "You walked into the station during the opening speech. Chaos ensued. A spiritual counselor fainted. 2 officers jumped into a supply crate." Rin snorted. "Accurate." The admiral rubbed his temples. "If you're willing. I'd like you to come with us and calm everyone down." Arya hesitated. "Do I have to make a speech?" "Preferably not," the admiral said. "Most of the crew is emotionally unstable at the moment." Arya sighed. "Fine. But if someone cries on me, I'm leaving." Rin muttered, "Someone's going to cry on her." Vale nodded. "Probably me." Arya stood, rubbing her sore shoulder, straightened her back, lifted her ears, and followed the officers toward the hallway. "Let's get this over with," she said. "Before someone buries me again." The doors to Hangar 3 slid open with a groan that sounded suspiciously like fear. Arya stepped inside alongside Admiral Saren, Rin wobbling behind her on her grav crutch and Vale muttering encouragement to himself that sounded like badly translated pep talk. The hangar was full. Hundreds of crew members shoulder to shoulder, all gathered under a large holographic banner bearing Arya's face, except the face was overly heroic, the ears were twice as long as in reality, and someone had added a dramatic glowing aura. Arya stared up at it. "Why do I look like I'm ascending into the heavens?" "That was the spiritual counselor's idea," Saren whispered. "She said your ears were transcendent." I look like a malfunctioning lighthouse. Before the Admiral could reply, someone in the crowd noticed her. A single gasp echoed, loud, shrill, and high enough for dogs planetside to hear. Several crew members turned. Then even more. Then the whisper shot through the hangar like a loose power cable. She's alive. She's here. She's, foaming. Arya wiped her cheek. That's decontamination residue. Ignore it. The hangar erupted. Some people cheered. Some cried. Some fainted. One of the engineers tried to climb a crate to get a better view, slipped, and fell into the arms of a very startled cook. Someone else shouted, "I told you she was immortal." Arya raised both hands. Please. Please. Stop. I'm not immortal. I barely survived a building. But the cheering only grew louder until Admiral Saren amplified his voice through the speakers. Everyone, please calm down. Lieutenant Talis is indeed alive, and we. Before he could finish, Tech Officer Laris ran forward, pointing at Arya as though presenting evidence in court. Not possible. I personally saw the casualty report. It said, 0 life signs, no chance of survival. Yes, Arya said, I read the same report. She paused. It was rude. Laris gaped. How did you survive? Arya gestured at herself. Stubbornness. And poor decision-making. Rin limped forward, eyes blazing. And she carried us both across a crater field while yelling insults at fate. Vale raised a hand from behind her. She also argued with a drone. Arya pinched the bridge of her nose. The drone started it. More murmurs spread. Then a communications officer raised her hand. Lieutenant, is it true you used half a drone wing to fix a broken leg? Arya frowned. It was there. The leg was broken. I improvised. The medic chief shouted from the back, improvised badly. Everyone lived, Arya replied. That means it was improvised perfectly. Several Marines cheered at this, as if survival by chaos was an admirable military strategy. Admiral Saren cleared his throat again. Lieutenant Talis will provide a full report later, but for now. A hand shot up. A junior officer with far too much energy and far too little common sense stepped forward. Sir. I think she deserves a commendation. A big one. With dramatic lighting. No lighting, Arya said immediately. I have been through enough. Rin snorted. She attacked a ravine at full speed. But ask her to stand under a spotlight? Impossible. Even the Admiral's mouth twitched. No dramatic lighting. He paused. But she does deserve recognition. That triggered yet another wave of chaos. Someone began clapping far too fast, someone else tripped over their own feet, and a squad of Marines began chanting her name with the enthusiasm of people who hadn't slept in 30 hours but refused to acknowledge it. Arya held up a hand again. Please. I'm not a hero. I just didn't want to fill out 2 casualty reports. The crowd quieted. A pilot near the front raised her voice. Then why did you keep going? You could have hidden. You could have waited. You could have given up. Arya met her eyes. Because they were alive. She nodded toward Rin and Vale. And as long as they were alive, I wasn't leaving them. Even when the ridge collapsed. Even when the drones hunted us. Even when Vale tried to fight a predator with a ration can. Vale raised a finger. In my defense. There is no defense, Arya said. The hangar filled with low laughter, soft but genuine, cutting through the tension. Then the Admiral stepped forward. Lieutenant, the station owes you an apology. We relied on faulty sensors, rushed analyses, and failed to verify the final readings. We declared you dead prematurely and without due diligence. Arya blinked. It's fine. Mistakes happen. No, Saren said. This one almost cost us more than we realized. He paused. You challenged fate. And protocol. And, apparently, gravity itself. I would not have challenged gravity, Arya muttered. Gravity challenged me. Rin nodded. It won. Saren turned to the crowd. Let it be known. Lieutenant Arya Talis is reinstated to active duty. Effective immediately. The hangar exploded with cheers. Arya wanted to crawl back into the decontamination chamber. As the noise settled, Commander Relos approached with a tablet. Lieutenant, we need your biometric signature to correct your personnel status. Fine, Arya said, tapping the screen. The tablet beeped, displayed an error, and then declared. Warning, user is both alive and deceased. Please choose one. Arya stared at the screen. Excuse me. The AI chimed overhead. Your data is currently in an ambiguous state. I am not ambiguous. You did kick me earlier, the AI reminded her. Because you said I was dead. You were. Arya threw her hands up. I was not. You were according to sensors. Rin leaned in. Arya, stop arguing with the AI before it reports you as emotionally unstable. The AI brightened. Updating file, emotional. No, Arya barked. Cancel. Cancel acknowledged. The Admiral stepped between Arya and the ceiling speakers before she could escalate into technological homicide. We will fix the records manually. For now, Lieutenant, your presence is required in my office after this gathering. There's paperwork. Arya groaned loudly. I survived a planetary bombardment for paperwork. Paperwork is essential, Saren said solemnly. Vale coughed. Sir, with respect, nothing about this station is essential. Several officers nodded in distant agreement. Saren ignored them all. Lieutenant, one more thing. There are political consequences to your return. Fleet Command wants to use your survival as a symbol. Oh no, Arya whispered. Not speeches. Not speeches, he assured her. But they will want interviews. Questions. Explanations. Maybe even a recruitment poster. A poster? Arya paled. Absolutely not. Rin grinned. Make the years longer on the poster. No longer. Arya exclaimed. My years are already long. Vale murmured, they're kind of short. Arya snapped, you're short. The crowd erupted with laughter. Slowly, the hangar began to disperse, officers returning to their duties with relief and renewed energy. But many stayed behind to pat Arya on the shoulder, shake her hand, or simply stare with disbelief, awe, or mild confusion. Eventually the hangar emptied enough for Arya to breathe. She turned to Rin and Vale. Both looked exhausted. You two need rest, she said softly. Rin scowled. We need vengeance against the drone that attacked us. Vale nodded. And snacks. Arya sighed. Fine. After the Admiral finishes yelling at me. Rin leaned closer. You did great, you know. Arya's ears twitched. I didn't do anything special. You came back, Rin said. That's more than anyone expected. Arya hesitated, then nodded. Come on. Let's face whatever command throws next. Vale groaned. Please let it not be more paperwork. It's absolutely paperwork, Arya said. And we will suffer together. They walked toward the exit, bruised, tired, teased, and strangely re-energized. While the holographic banner overhead flickered, then glitched, enlarging Arya's ears to comical proportions before shutting itself off in defeat. Arya didn't look back. She just muttered, "I'm going to find whoever designed that thing." Vale murmured, "Maybe they're already dead." Arya sighed. "Lucky them." Arya walked behind Admiral Saren toward his office, each step heavier than the last. Rin and Vale followed until the Med Chief appeared from nowhere like an angry wraith, grabbed both Marines by their collars, and dragged them back toward the medical wing without ceremony. Rin shouted something about injustice. Vale shouted something about sandwiches. The door slid shut behind them, leaving Arya alone with the Admiral and her rapidly depleting patience. The Admiral's office was cluttered with datapads, half-finished reports, and one stressed-looking potted plant that leaned toward the emergency exit as if attempting escape. Saren waved Arya inside and motioned for her to sit. She did, albeit reluctantly, bracing for more interrogation, more questions, more lectures about protocol. Instead, the Admiral sat down heavily and rubbed his forehead. "Lieutenant," he began, "I owe you more than an apology." Arya blinked. "Sir, if this is about the coffee machine exploding." "It is not," he interrupted. "Though we will address that later." She groaned. "It was one time." "3, he corrected. "But that's not the point. We misjudged you. We misread the data. And we underestimated your capacity for unconventional survival." Arya raised an eyebrow. "Is that a compliment?" "It is the closest you'll get from me," he said. "Don't make me repeat it." She smirked. The Admiral tapped a control panel, and a holographic display floated above the desk. "Fleet Command has already issued a statement. They're calling your survival a testament to interspecies cooperation, military courage, and extraordinary resilience." Arya's ears twitched. "That's dramatic." "That's politics," Saren said. "They want you to speak at a fleet-wide broadcast ceremony tomorrow." "No," Arya said immediately. "Absolutely not. I will die again before giving a speech." Saren's lips twitched. "You might actually cause another fainting incident." She leaned forward. "Sir, I survived because I didn't give up on my Marines. That's all. I'm not a symbol." "You are," he said gently. "Because people need one." Arya stiffened. She could argue with drones, cliffs, collapsing bunkers, malfunctioning AI, and annoying Marines. But she couldn't argue with hope, not when she'd clung to it herself. Her ears drooped slightly, and she let out a breath. "Fine," she muttered. "But I'm not wearing a cape." "No one suggested a cape," Saren said. "They will. Someone in this station will absolutely suggest it." He didn't deny it. He cleared his throat. "As for your official status," he gestured to a datapad. "Your file has been corrected. You are no longer listed as deceased. Or emotionally unstable." Arya frowned. "Wait, why was that even in there?" "Long story involving your argument with the AI." Arya slapped her forehead. "Of course." He held out a stylus. "Sign this, and everything is formally reinstated." She signed, and the datapad beeped happily, as if relieved to have a living owner again. The Admiral leaned back. "One more thing. Fleet Command insists we award you a medal." Arya groaned loudly. "No. Not medals. It's not optional." "A small medal, then." "It is not small." She flattened her ears. "Does it glow?" "Only slightly." "No glowing." Saren sighed. "I will see what I can do." A silence settled, a rare, soft one. Arya stared at her hands, the scrapes along her knuckles, the faint tremor of exhaustion she tried to hide. "Sir," she said quietly, "I didn't do any of this alone. Rin and Vale are receiving commendations as well," Saren assured her. Your report made that clear. Arya nodded, relief loosening something tight in her chest. She stood, saluted, properly this time, and turned toward the door. Lieutenant, Saren called softly. She paused. You did well. Her ears lifted. Thank you, sir. She stepped into the hallway, letting the door slide shut behind her. The station felt different now. Not heavier, lighter, somehow. People moved with more energy as she passed. A few smiled. A few saluted. One crewman tried to bow but miscalculated and crashed into a supply cart. Arya pretended not to see him struggling under a pile of fallen rations. She headed toward the observation deck, seeking quiet. When the doors opened, she found Rin and Vale already there, wrapped in medical wraps and drinking smuggled cocoa. Rin lifted her cup. You survived the Admiral. Vale leaned back. Did he give you a medal? Does it glow? Not yet, Arya grumbled. But it might. Vale shuddered. Terrifying. She joined them by the transparent viewport. Stars scattered across the void beyond, cold and bright, a reminder of how small they were and how vast everything else was. Yet for the first time since the planet, Arya let herself breathe. We made it, Rin murmured, resting her chin on her crutch. We did, Arya agreed. Because you dragged us the whole way, Vale added. Arya nudged him with her elbow. You walked some of it. I walked 3 meters. And they were impressive meters. He grinned. The three of them fell into a comfortable silence, watching a freighter drift by, its thrusters painting faint blue streaks across the dark. Rin finally spoke. What now? Arya considered the question. Before the mission, she would have said her life was predictable, follow orders, save who she could, break a few regulations semi-accidentally, survive another day. But now, something had shifted. She had faced the worst, and returned, not because anyone ordered it, but because she chose to. Now, Arya said slowly, I do what I've always done. 'Cause trouble? Vale guessed. Argue with the AI. Rin suggested. Defy command. Vale added. Arya chuckled. No. Well, sometimes. But mostly, she paused, her long ears lowering with sincerity. I take care of my people. All of them. Even the ones who make terrible decisions involving ration cans. Vale placed a hand over his heart. I feel seen. Rin smirked. Terrifying. Arya leaned against the viewport, letting her reflection mingle with the stars. I didn't know what I was capable of. Not really. I always thought courage was something you planned for. Turns out. It's something you do while complaining the entire time. That's extremely accurate, Rin said. And heroic, Vale added. Arya shook her head. I'm not heroic. Rin raised her cup. You are. Even if you hate the idea. Vale lifted his cup too. To the lieutenant who refused to stay dead. Arya blinked. Please don't use that as a toast. But they clinked cups anyway. She sighed, but a small smile tugged at her lips. Maybe being a symbol wasn't so terrible. If it meant her crew felt braver, stronger, better because of it. Maybe surviving wasn't the end of her story but the start of something larger. Something earned. The station lights dimmed slightly as the artificial day shifted into artificial night. Arya pushed herself upright. Come on, she said. Let's get you back to the medbay before the chief hunts me down. Rin groaned. Fine. Vale grinned. Can we stop for snacks? I'm starving. Arya sighed dramatically. Yes. But nothing spicy. I'm too tired for a digestive emergency. They walked out together, slow, limping, laughing, 3 survivors bound by chaos, stupidity, courage, friendship, and the unyielding refusal to let go. Behind them, the viewport reflected the stars as the station drifted onward, no longer morning, but beginning again. Arya didn't look back. She didn't need to. For the first time, she knew exactly where she was going.